Welcome to the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast, where we come together to discuss some of the more significant struggles and metaphorical battlefields that we've faced along our journeys and share some insight on how we've conquered them. I am JD McGibney, and today I'll be chatting with the funny, compassionate, epic, totally metal, and all-around great guy, Mr. Mike Grippo of Kissing Candice. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. How you doing, JD? Thanks so much for having me on. I really
dude.
appreciate that you
Thank you for thanks for coming to hang out and bringing that awesome epic energy that you always have with you.
The monotonous energy, man. It's really something.
It's very unique. It's very Mike.
Yeah. So I get unique or peculiar.
Exactly. Uniquely peculiar. Peculiarly unique.
There you go. Can't go wrong there. That's like two really interesting words in one.
Exactly.
Not one word, but one thing next to another.
One description.
Yeah. I like it.
So today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. Loosely defined, imposter syndrome is when a person doubts their abilities and feels like a fraud. Some of the things that one with imposter syndrome might be experiencing are an extreme lack of self-confidence, feelings of inadequacy, constant comparison to other people, anxiety, self-doubt, distrust in one's intuition and capabilities, negative self-talk, dwelling on the past, irrational fear of the future, taking on extra work to make sure that you're doing it all, and shrugging off any accolades anytime someone praises you. According to the American Society of Microbiology, about 70% of all people are affected in some way at some point by imposter syndrome. It is not currently recognized by the DSM-5 as a mental illness. Rather, it is an overall perspective on how one views themselves. Coming from the world of entertainment as musicians, both Mike and I can relate personally to battling imposter syndrome for a really long time. So, Mike, when was the first time that you recognized some of these signs of imposter syndrome? And do you feel that any of those feelings are still around today?
They're definitely around today. I remember the first time I experienced it was actually when I got asked. I just graduated college. I was going to get my sick 9-to-5 job.
Oh, yeah.
And live out my life in my cubicle and then die. But that didn't seem too appealing. So I got asked to join this band. They're like, yeah, we've got the band was just starting. No shows have been played. And there's rumors of oh, we're going to go do a tour. I'm like, tour? I'm like, that'd be cool. And they're like, well, we need a bassist still. You want to fill in for the first couple dates? I'm like, yeah, I can't really play bass, so I kind of suck. I'm not that good. But I decided to go for it anyway. And then the tour got canceled, so I didn't have to do anything. But then, so this is the first tour is a Canadian tour. I'd never been to Canada before. It was with a band that I guess was somewhat. I mean, they weren't that big. I can't remember their name. I know Paul from Varsity was in it, I think. So Paul from Varsity, if you ever watched it, can you tell me what band it was? I forget.
That's funny.
But so that tour got canceled. It's still weird. I'm in a band that's planning on touring. That's crazy. I just got a degree in sociology. And then the really big shit happened when our singer used to sell merch for Sid Wilson of Slipknot. Mm-hmm. So when they were doing the first ever Knotfest, Sid would be like, yo, you get a band, I'll put you guys I'll build the stage and put you on it. And it seemed like your typical, yo, I got you, man, kind of talk. It never actually happens.
Yeah.
But then one day we got a call and was like, hey, I just need a generator for that stage I'm running. And then you guys are good to go. And we're like, what? Is it real? And he's like, yeah. And we're like, oh. He's like, I probably get the generator though. Okay, figured, normal shit. But then get the call, he's got the generator. Next thing we know, we're loading up a miniature school bus on our way to Iowa to play the first ever Knotfest as our second ever show. And the first show we played was at
which is crazy, by the way.
It's insane. It was an absolute strange event. We've all been in bands. All of us have been in bands before playing the local scene over and over for 8 years at this point. So we all kind of feel we put the legwork in, so we don't feel bad about going to play Knotfest or second ever show. We've done the work in other bands. So
I think that's an interesting point that I think you bring up. The fact that you're talking about, I'm assuming you're talking about Kissing Candice with doing
that'd be correct.
So like Kissing Candice for the second show that Kissing Candice ever played, was Not Fest, which is like a big metal festival for anyone that's watching that's not, into the metals. But seeing something like that, it's like, oh, the band seemed to come out of nowhere. But at the same time, everyone in the band had been in the local music scene for, like you said, literally years. So you had built all these relationships. You had, done your time, as they say. And like, there's all this stuff that's going on behind the scenes. So that's why when you finally get something that seems, like that big for like a band that seems really new, I don't know, I feel like most people, like, us included, especially being right there in the middle of it, it's just like, oh, how does this work? How do I process this? And I think that's something like that is like a gateway for imposter syndrome to come in, because you spend all this time in other bands and nothing happens, and then you're in a band for like 5 seconds, and because of all the relationships that you've built, you have an opportunity, right out of the gate. So it's like, oh, is this really happening? Like, do I deserve this?
No, that's not happening. It's fake.
Yeah,
that's like, we're gonna show up, and they're gonna be like, "Who the hell are you? Get out of here!" Like, you belong here. But we showed up and parked there, got outside the van. Like, guys from Slipknot were like, "Yo, what's up, guys?" We're like, "I guess we're in the right place. This is weird. This band's played one show before on the way here. That's it."
That is funny.
Yeah, it was crazy, and like it was Slipknot and Deftones. Even if you don't know metal, you've probably heard Slipknot or
and
Deftones. Just come down. Their singer was on, not the band, but still, that's huge.
Yeah. No,
but playing that, like just walking in there, it didn't feel real. I'm like, this must be like some sort of trick or something. Like someone's gonna run up me and pull my pants off on stage or something.
You've been punked.
Yeah. If Ashton Kutcher would have popped out, I would have felt even more imposter syndrome. Like, not only is Slipknot here, but Ashton Kutcher's here too. He got all these people here.
Yeah, at that point, you would have been like, there's definitely something going on.
Yeah, I want to know what was coming next.
But it's speaking for like the realm of music, just because like that's, what you and I most know, like intimately. It's like, I think imposter syndrome comes in a lot more because when we're first starting out, like when we're teenagers, or let's say you started off in like in your 20s, and like you're just starting out in the in bands, trying to like figure out how the whole thing works, and then like realizing that there's a difference between like casual bands and like career bands. Like you hear a lot of stuff, a lot of advice, and a lot of feedback from people who are not in the industry and who don't understand the industry, or like people who just don't understand how like a small business runs. And like, so you hear a lot of this feedback that kind of feeds your inner, I guess like your inner voice to start questioning, like, oh, am I doing the right thing? Or should I really have that 9-to-5 job? Or should I do this that I want to be doing? So like, do you feel that growing up, like when you first started doing music, like initially, do you feel like you had a lot of that kind of talk from people in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I was always told like, oh, you should have other hobbies besides music and things like that. And they're like, what, like golf? And they're like, yeah, like golf or something. I'm like, I'll get to golf after music. But it was always things like that, like you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing more work in school instead of playing bass all the time and starting random bands with random people, and you play the battle of the bands at college, and you lose every time because you play in a metal band. But that's and it's a lot of that talk. Even now today, like people see that we've toured, they see that we've done what I would say are bigger things, like Not Fest. We've done Mayhem Fest, like another big metal tour with Slayer. We did the full 30 days of it, and that was an arena tour, and we weren't playing the arena stage. We're playing the stage except next arena, but still, it's the same tour.
Yeah, no, it's still like a big tour to be a part of.
Yeah, it's still really big. And then like you come home and you have no money in your pocket, and you call your job up and you're like, I'm back home now, ready to come back to work, because even though I'm doing these things that seem big, I am not making big money whatsoever.
There's just
I'm
like
like,
bigger bands, bands like Testament, like they have like Chuck Billy from Testament has a day job. If I remember
yeah,
correctly, it's like a truck driver. But like,
I would not be surprised. He's definitely a man, like an artist manager though of many artists too. So like,
yeah,
Testament doesn't just make him his paycheck. He does Testament, and then he manages like, I think he manages like, no, I'm thinking of Des from Cold Chamber, like
oh yeah,
manages
yeah,
like Cradle of Filth and stuff, like bigger bands even. I know that. I think Chuck does the same thing. So he has these other sources of income.
yeah. Well, that's
And
also just like good business when I wanted to have multiple
yeah,
revenue sources.
absolutely.
But like,
Always got
uh, I think a lot of like I pointed out, there's definitely a lot of misunderstanding on how the music industry works, especially from like the artist perspective. Like it's not like a 9 to 5. You don't have that, Monday through Friday, Friday you get your paycheck kind of thing. It's like you have to constantly work. You're literally a private contractor. Once the job
yeah.
is done, you don't have a revenue source coming in. So you have to constantly find ways to get that revenue coming in. And I think having that mindset is really critical. And I think a lot of people in general don't have that mindset because we're kind of like, at least in the United States and like Western culture, we're trained right off the bat to, you know, live by a bell and have that 9 to 5 kind of schedule. So we have that training. So
Yeah.
when you have people that, naturally think differently and like go, oh, I want to work like this because the other way is making me like depressed. You get a lot of feedback from a lot of people and a lot of people that,
Everyone.
you respect, people that you love, people that are in your life like constantly, people that you look up to, and they don't understand this other process, so they're giving you feedback on what they know. So I could definitely see how that feeds into overall imposter syndrome because you're getting all this feedback from people who seem like they're doing fairly well in life or like they're successful, and then you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
want to be successful, but I want to do it
My
with
way.
a bass in my hand.
Yeah. Exactly. It's always been really hard watching like your friends all become successful, and you hit a point where you've been doing this for so long. Like I just turned 33, and I'm still doing this. I'm like, is it too late for me to even go get a career if I wanted to? I'm not sure. Maybe like I question that a lot. I'm like, is that what I should have done 10 years ago? Should I have done that one show with Slipknot? Been like, I hit the top, I'm out. See you guys. But I took it like it became a business to me. I mean, I still love it and everything, but I had went sign us up for an LLC. So all of a sudden, I'm a small business owner. I went
Yeah,
from playing bass in bands to owning a business. I'm like, this is bizarre.
yeah, and that's
I had to file taxes.
what do you mean we
And
got to
those
pay
taxes don't
taxes?
look good when you're in a band. It's like, oh, let's see your, so you're, because then they add up everything you made, like everything you spent. You're like, oh, you don't owe any taxes this year because you spent way more than you made. It's like, what
It's
about
like,
that $10,000 check we got from the label? It's like, yeah,
no,
that too.
yeah, no, that's a really good point. Especially uh taking into consideration that the average amount of time that it takes for anyone in any career, but specifically in like entertainment in general, takes anywhere between 5 to 10 years to see any real success as like the wider spectrum would deem it. But if you're in a position where like you're actually bringing in revenue, you're able to like pay for certain things. I personally would deem that like a success. But again, success is different for everybody. If
Yeah.
you get to a point where you can pay your bills,
Oh,
you
that's
know
success there. If you can
yeah.
just play music and pay your bills and live in like a shack, that's success with metal.
Oh man. But like the fact that like you brought up the fact that like you've been doing, how long have you been in Kissing Candice? It's been about 10 years, give or
nine
take.
years that
9 years.
we started. Yeah, I think it's been 9 years. We've been signed on to three record labels now. And I remember the first time going to sign was, it's like I was read the contract and like I'm like, I can't believe this is in my hand right now. Is it real? Is it going to disintegrate? Because there's no way we're getting. It was Victory Records at the time who they had like larger metal bands, like some I used to buy their CDs all the time at Best Buy growing up from the end caps every week.
Yep.
I'm like, am I really gonna sign
Every
a
Tuesday.
contract with this label? Yeah. And then I went to the office and it all felt really fake up there because I'm like, everyone's like coming up, the owner of the label who signed all my favorite bands. He's coming up to me, he's like, hey, Grip, how you doing, man? I'm like, good. Like, this guy took time to know my name. Like, it's very bizarre.
Yeah. Well, that, one, that it shows that they were genuinely interested, but the fact that like,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that like you keep mentioning all these things that like you've gone through all these big like milestones that people who are in bands literally just dream of. They're like, oh my god, I can't wait for this, I can't wait for this. And like
And
you
nothing
get
happened.
these, yeah, well, things did happen though, but that's the thing. Like you had the show, you played the show, but even like when you said you were in the moment, like everything didn't feel real, even up to the point where you were up on stage. Like you said, you were like half expecting like fucking Ashton Kutcher to pop out and be like,
Yeah.
oh, punked. And like when you guys got signed, it's like you felt like they didn't, it didn't feel real, and like you were surprised that he even knew your name, yet he was there signing you with like a business contract.
Absolutely. He had my name on a contract in front of him I was signing. I'd imagine he knows, I know his name. So, I mean, he's a businessman. So I guess he should know my name, but still, it was that thing where I'm like, is this really happening? Is this, like, it felt so fake. And
Now
then
I'm
like,
curious. It sounds like imposter syndrome is kind of like just constantly like part of your life. Like when things are like really big, you seem to like question, like these big like life nodes, or like these career life nodes. Do you feel that imposter syndrome do you feel like it shows up in other areas of your life other than say with like music? Like if you're like oh, I have a really cool deal for like this really great car, like is this real? Like are there any other areas where you find that like imposter syndrome pops up?
yeah, I'll find that like often, like, and even just living and going to my normal job. Like people at my normal job think I'm funny. Like, you think I'm funny? I'm like pretty strange, I was like, I'm definitely not funny, but and just like just sometimes like I'll become very dissociated. Is that the word? Where you just feel like
Disassociated?
yeah, you feel like you're like out of your body, kind of like
Oh,
looking
yeah.
at yourself as if it were a movie. Even if
That's
I'm just like walking sometimes. It's
that's
very
interesting.
rare. I know
So,
it's a part of, it can be a part of anxiety, which
mhm.
is something I experience as well. So it's
Yeah, if I'm correct, I believe it is, like you said, it's a symptom of anxiety, but I think it's also related to depression, where like if people with
yeah,
like severe depression, like if it gets so
both
bad, like they just
depression,
disassociate.
depression, anxiety are probably two of the most common things you'll find in especially metal musicians.
Yeah, a
No one
lot
who
of musicians, period,
yeah.
especially country music.
No one who in their right mind, like who's totally normal, just
Wants to be an
wanting to out of
artist.
college, wants their job, hops in a van with like five dirty dudes and like goes around playing dive bars for gas money and Papa John's pizza. No one in their right mind does that. If you're
Listen,
sane, you don't do
Papa
that.
John's is like the right kind of greasy.
Yeah, it is. It's not bad. But we're from New York, man, so we gotta keep our standards higher than that.
True, but like when you have pizza like that, the way you get around it is like you just tell yourself it's not actually pizza; it's just fancy
Yeah.
bread.
It's like, yeah, it's bread with cheese and sauce and a lot of like
Exactly.
spray grease on it.
It's just a
But
gallon
they
of
try
like
to tell you
Pam.
it's pizza. They'll be trying to
You're
tell you
like,
it's
no,
pizza. Like,
like
no, it's not pizza. And I start to question, am I even from New York?
I like this. What's wrong?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you seem to have that that inner voice questioning like a lot of things that like happen. Like the fact that people give you like the accolades, people like compliment you, and like you're like, oh, this is real. Do you really think I'm funny? What's
Yeah.
going on here? Uh, when do you feel like you first felt that or feel like you recognize that that was like your go-to response to things?
I feel like growing up, I didn't get that much attention like
Mhm.
from my peers. So I think that might have something to do with it. It's like, huh. Then all of a sudden, like I get into college and, I'm forced with people who are outside of my social circle and they're introducing me to new people and these new people seem to like me. I'm just like, weird. Why? But that's when I kind of feel like started feeling weird. I'm like, this can't be real. I'm like, I'm just that guy. I don't get these things. These things don't happen to me.
Interesting.
Nothing cool.
It sounds like you kind of just had, like you grew up like during like your formative years, like you kind of just had this routine of, okay, this is how it is in like
Yeah,
social settings. And then like when you, like you said, when you got to college, you were like thrown out of your element completely, and it was, totally different environment. And then you're just have this cautious nature to like question what's going on here. And
absolutely.
it seems like, a lot of it relates back to you questioning, uh I guess, questioning the connection between you and the instance that's, happening.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's like these things, all these, whenever something big happens, even like the small things, like I'll question it a lot. But the big things are always like, it can't be real. It's not going to happen. But it's at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't these things happen? We put in the legwork. We've been a band for 9 years. We have a pretty solid, dedicated fan base. It might
Mhm.
be smaller, but they're dedicated and they're real. They
Fans are
exist.
fans.
They come to shows. They're awesome, and people see that. The industry knows it. So, like, if we're offered something big, why it would make sense that we would get it. But then in my mind, I'm like, there's no chance it's happening. I feel like it's the thing with a lot of the members of my band too. We'll be like offered like a tour. I'm like, well, that tour is definitely made up and not happening. Or it's like some guy who's pretending to be an agent, which has happened
Oh
before,
God.
saying he's booking these bands and books you on it. And we're like, oh, he's gonna like be like, oh yeah, like the band's name. You're like, I never heard that guy.
Who's
We've had
this?
that happen.
That
So it's like
sounds like that was
for
not a fun experience.
it was terrible. But you know, we didn't have high hopes for it anyway, so it was all right. And I'm at the point where I've met enough people I can ask around, like, hey, do you know this guy? Oh, he's an action agent. He just makes up things and puts them on a contract and sends them to you. I'm like, oh, that sounds terrible. I'm not gonna sign that.
It's like, no, we'll pass.
Yeah,
Do you feel um do you feel that because you question a lot of the things that come your way, do you feel like you uh overwork yourself or like take on a lot of tasks in order to make it so that you feel like you deserve what's coming your way? So like say when you get like the record contract, you feel like a need to be like, okay, what do I have to do to like step up my game to really prove that like this is real and to make sure that I can keep this?
absolutely. I take on so many tasks. My girlfriend tells me I'm so busy and overworked all the time because between working my normal job and running my band like a small business, it's basically like working to three full-time jobs. Sometimes,
Yeah,
I'm doing more than 40 at one or the other. And
you don't need
I'm
to
just
sleep.
always at
Sleep's
work. I
overrated.
never sleep. And it's just like I'll take on so much extra. Like I run the band's social media. I run our merch store. I have a storage unit across the street from here. I do all the web design. I do um, all like most of the marketing. I
So
do
are you
most of the t-shirt design.
are you like the main like guy who runs like the business stuff for the band?
Yeah, I would say I handle like 90% of the business aspect of it.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you
At least at
definitely.
home. On the road, like I'll tour manage, but and advance shows and whatnot. Like still, even then, I'm working in the van, so like I can't just sit and relax and wait for the next show. I'm like, I have to work.
Oh
I
yeah,
have to
that
keep this going, or it's gonna
it
fall apart.
well, that's definitely like something like people also don't understand is like you, in order to, be in a band, you have to work. You have to put in like the hours because again, it's a small business. But like, it definitely sounds like you take on the majority of the work. Do you feel like when you do that, it helps to, I guess, like balance out that feeling of like imposter syndrome, where like you're questioning whether or not you deserve what's coming your way, or do you feel like you're still battling that feeling of like, I don't really deserve this that's coming my way?
I guess it does kind of balance out. Like with that, it's like
Hmm.
I want to deserve these things. I want them to be earned. I
Gotcha.
don't want them to be handed to me. If they're handed to me, I'm like, well, why did I get this? Doesn't make any sense. But if I'm constantly working and something gets given to me for it, I'm like, well, I have been putting in the work. It's like I have been designing our ad sets on social media for the past 45 hours straight. And I do think I perfected them. So it's like, maybe this will work out. But still, even then, when the thing happens, like right now in COVID, nothing's happening. So
Well, yeah, that's understandable. The world's
that's
pretty
been
much,
hard
yeah.
too. It's been working for basically to stay afloat, like stay relevant. Because now is the time. If you were not a serious band, you sank straight to the bottom. You had to stay in front of people's eyes, in their ears.
Dude, like even like huge bands like Nightwish, like
Yeah,
the was it the what's his name, Marco, the bass player, the male singer who played bass player, I think his name is Marco. He ended up just like had like an epiphany. I was like, I gotta quit, and he left the band.
wow.
Like stuff like that, like
Yeah,
it's
there's
COVID
you see
threw
that
the entire planet for a
a
fucking
lot of
loop.
bands, and you'll see like bands where they relied on their bands or sole income
Mhm.
because they're big enough to do that. But then when COVID hits, that sole income just goes away. That
Yeah,
touring 9 months out of the year making $150,000 is gone all of a sudden.
you're like,
Like
oh
I
shit.
saw Matt Heafy from Trivium is basically doing Twitch for a living now, or was throughout the pandemic, and doing great at it. He found
Yeah.
another outlet that's creative, fun. He's doing all sorts of guitar stuff on it, so engaging with his audience and whatnot.
Yeah, well, Maddie from Psychostick ended up doing like live stream stuff. Like they were doing like the Psychostick things, and then like he
Yeah,
ended up doing his own thing, and like he was able to like raise money for charity while he was doing it too. So like all throughout the
wow.
pandemic, he was like helping to.
Moose.
Yeah.
That's the moose right there. He needs to raise. I hope the charity was something to do with wildlife.
Oh man,
Or
actually,
moose.
he all the people that were
He made it. Oh, I think he made a charity about moose.
dude, that would have been fantastic.
Save the
The
moose.
moose charity.
Yeah.
He all the people that were like watching, he basically each week, I think he said, like, or each month, I forget, he had everyone vote and say, hey, where do I want to where am I sending the money this month or this week? So like he had people vote, and it was a different one each time.
That's very awesome.
Yeah,
Maddie's got a heart of gold
I
and
love that man. I love that man.
gambler.
He's
Me
one of
too. He's
the
great.
best humans on the
I hope
planet.
he's watching. Yo, Moose, I love you, man.
Woo.
Hit me up in a while. I would do the same thing. My arms are firmly on my knees right now, and they're
It's
very
okay,
comfortable.
don't fall over.
He's got me though.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Do you when you get into this questioning mode of like this, you're questioning whether or not you deserve this stuff, do you find it yourself do you find yourself talking down to yourself and like your abilities and like saying, oh,
Uh,
I don't deserve this? Or do you feel like you find yourself saying, I'm not good enough to do X, Y, and Z?
all the time. I
Really?
feel like I'm not even a good enough bass player to even play in a touring band. Never mind. Like, that's probably also why I do a lot of the business. I'm like, I have to carry my weight. It's like,
Interesting.
well, I'm not that good of a bassist, but for when it comes down to it, the music we play, I'm probably a fairly fine bassist because it's more theatrics than it is intricate playing. Like, we're not a technical death grind band, We're not um, necrophagist or anything like that.
You're not Dream Theater because
Or,
they're aliens
yeah,
from like another dimension.
yeah. I wish I was.
Oh
Pretty
man.
cool.
I
But
think it's
we are from the same place as Dream Theater, though, so we might be. Actually, they're from aliens, outer space. They just stay there from Long Island, liars.
well, I think Long Island is just like a hub for aliens, so it
Yeah,
definitely makes sense.
right. Oh, sorry, I totally lost that question thing.
No, it's all good. I think
what was it again?
I was asking like if you you find yourself talking down to yourself and like
Yeah.
you know
The answer is definitely
basically
yes.
saying that you're not good enough, which I think is fascinating because you have reached all these different tiers of success and like things that people like who are watching, who are fans or people who like are into like just the music in general, like they would be like, oh wow, that's big, oh wow, that's big, that's even bigger. And
Yeah.
the fact that like you've hit these tiers that people literally just dream about, and like some people
Yeah.
aren't even able to get out of their bedroom because they either just don't believe in themselves, they like they're just afraid to take that first step. You've done all these things where you've had the courage to say, fuck it, I'm gonna go follow my heart and I'm gonna go do this band thing. And then you've gone and taught yourself all these different skills from like learning bass. You're like, I don't play bass, fuck it, I'll play bass. You just start learning how to play, and like
Yeah.
you build up those skills, and then you're like, well, I don't feel like I'm able to do this, so let me like take up all the business stuff. So you teach yourself the business, and you're like, oh, I'm going to actually turn this into a legitimate business and register, and like you pick up all this stuff. And there's a lot of things that it sounds like you've done, and like you're the main person who's in charge of the business aspect of things, and like you're the person kind of like running everything. I'm sure everyone like carries their own weight in like their own way.
Yeah, everyone's got their own thing.
But I think
like,
it's interesting that you've gotten to this point, it's 9 years later, and you still have this like voice or this feeling in the back of your head saying, oh, I know I'm not good enough. And I'm curious as to where you feel that comes from.
That's a good question. I think I'm not even, I just always feel like, I guess it's been a thing that's always in my life. Like, do I just this constant self doubting and everything. Like, ever since I was as far back as I can remember, like, I'm not good enough for this. I remember like playing sports in elementary school, but like, don't pass the basketball, man. I'm not good enough. It's like, I didn't want to try. I'm sure if I tried, I probably could have played better, but I didn't really want to. But
Interesting. You mentioned a little earlier in the conversation that like anxiety is something that is part of your life. Do you think?
yeah,
Do you think that anxiety is the main catalyst for you having these thoughts, these questions, and like leading to the overall imposter syndrome?
I very well think it may be. Like, I didn't really consider myself as having anxiety until a few years ago, and then things kind of made a little more sense. I'm like, oh, huh, I never thought of it that way. I'm like, I might just be a person who has anxiety, and then I was told that I'm a person who has anxiety. So it's like, wow, okay, what's that mean? Oh, I can experience all these things that I've experienced. Wow, it does make sense.
It's crazy too that like you go through life feeling a certain way, and you're just like, oh, just whatever, like you just feel like, and I'm assuming you felt like an outcast because you had this this way of thinking, this way of feeling, and then like you had this moment of like epiphany where I'm assuming someone or like multiple people like pointed these things out, and like you found out like all these things about anxiety that seemed to like check off like the little boxes. Imagine like having that realization was like a big like a weight being lifted, like a light bulb went off, like a light shone down. Am I correct?
Yeah, it definitely was. But at the same time, like, it's like I'll still have these things happen. It's like I'll be like, I'm not good enough for this or that. But then what I've been trying to do is remind myself, like, I'm in a position. I think back to like something like Mayhem Festival, and like how there's thousands and thousands of bands that play their hometown venues that never leave there. I'm on Mayhem Fest, even though we're the smallest band on Mayhem Fest. I'm like, we're still on Mayhem Fest. There's only 9 bands on it, and we're one of the 9.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if I asked anyone in a local band, like, do you think it'd be cool being on Mayhem Fest? They're probably like, we would literally kill people to get on Mayhem Fest.
They would slaughter their own drummer.
Yeah.
To the metal gods.
Absolutely.
Just play to a drum
they would
track.
kill their bassist because then they don't even anyway.
Unless it's Mudvayne or
bass joke from bassist. Terrible.
Listen, bassists are awesome, especially every bassist named Mike.
Yeah, Dude, what's his name? I forget. The other Mike, the sick one. All of them. That's what I was talking about.
Every
single Mike named base.
Every base is named Mike.
Every base that named it. Every person who's named their base Mike is really sick base. If you're trying to become really good, just look over your base right now. I'm like, I'm naming you Mike. Good to go.
5 minutes later, you're going to be a base whiz.
Yeah. You would already be better than me, probably. And not name my base Mike.
You should name it Mike. This way it could be Mike and Mike.
Dude, it's a good idea, actually.
And then you can have a whole series called The Adventures of Mike and Mike.
Damn. Yeah, I was looking for ideas for a YouTube series. That might be it.
It's
the
a
one
hit.
I was really hard, but I might just like take my base around town, like holding hands with it, walking down the street, hand in hand, arm in arm.
That's fucking funny. That's really funny. Yeah, I think you've been pretty thorough with sharing kind of like your thoughts and your experiences. So yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
Let's see. I definitely know. I've heard a lot about. I never really thought about imposter syndrome before but my girlfriend loves all like TED Talks and stuff and studies mental health, and so she put on a TED Talk for me one day about imposter syndrome. I'm like, oh wow, this sounds very familiar. I'm like, this is a thing. I'm like, this is just how everyone feels. And sometimes like you just assume there's something wrong with you, but really it's probably something that a lot of people experience. I'm sure almost everyone experiences imposter syndrome at some point in life. You know, they stand up on a stage in front of 1,000 people. They're going to feel like an imposter up there. Like, you're not going to feel like, oh, it's me. It's like, how am I here? Why am I here? I don't deserve to be here. What about that guy? He's better than I am.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you're bringing up, is the fact that, you know, your personal experiences, like you just went through your entire life just feeling a certain way, feeling like alienated because of it, not realizing
I even know that's
like,
a thing that people experience.
Yeah, and like there are other people like that.
Like intensely as I did, but I'm probably in the middle somewhere. But you know, it's like, oh, like everyone's gonna experience it at some point. It's just how much you're gonna experience it and how much you're gonna let it weigh on you.
Exactly. And like I think having these kind of conversations where like, you know, like we're just talking about like what we've gone through, or like how we feel, you know, I think that goes a long way in just showing other people that it's okay to, you know, just talk about how you're feeling, especially in like, you know, a culture like, you know, the Western United States. Like we're two guys talking about our emotions, and like that's for the longest time been like
and we're in metal bands.
And we're in metal bands. We're supposed to literally just be like rough, tough Vikings, and here we are, just like, you know,
have like
crocheting and sharing, you know, our hearts.
Corpse paint on right now. She's smashing my computer with a hammer.
Oh, I'm sad.
Turning out the window and doing playing golf, I guess. Men love
my God, playing golf in corpse paint. That needs to happen.
Yeah,
but
there's no show yet.
But seriously, I think the fact that, you know, you are here having this conversation, you know, it's a really big step. I think not, you know, for you being able to like sit down and talk about this in like a public setting, but also for the fact that like we're putting this out there for people to use as a tool to be like, oh, you know what, this person feels similarly to how I do. Like I'd feel less alone. And then it's, you know, potentially going to encourage people to do further research and realize, oh, this is, you know, this is something that can be dealt with, or it could be treated, it could be handled. Yeah.
It's real, it exists. And if you think you experience it, you probably do.
Yeah, and other people will as well.
Uncommon.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing.
I don't know how common it is. I feel like it's, from everyone I hear talk about it, they say it's fairly common, with experience at least here and there.
Well, I think a lot of this stuff is more common than like we, you know, we're told or like we hear, because not a lot of people are like talking about it openly. And like I said, like having this open conversation, I think is a really big step just for everyone in general.
Like in elementary school, they never mention mental health. They just tell you like, oh, depressed kids kill themselves.
Yeah, don't be depressed. Talk to your kid.
They're depressed. You're like, oh my God, this is terrible.
They tell you to talk to a counselor. But it's like, I don't know who this counselor is. Like, how do I approach like my friends? How do I approach my family? And they don't teach you.
counselor.
They don't teach you like how to take in a conversation like that. They don't teach you like if your friend or your loved one comes to you, like how is it you're supposed to like have that conversation? I think speaking personally, like my biggest thing is like I just always have an innate like instinct to try and fix things, and like I have to solve a problem. I have to rescue people. So
Yeah.
learning to overcome that, that natural like reaction, just to listen, just to let people talk and have someone to like speak to and just absorb without giving like advice or having an answer, like that goes a long way with a lot of people because they just feel like they need to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. That's 100% the truth. And if you're listening to this, go find that counselor. I don't mean go find your school counselor. Find someone. It could be a therapist. It could be someone in your family who you feel close to that you can talk to about things. A friend.
Yeah.
Reach out to people who aren't mean on the internet. find some kind of forum or something where you can at least figure out a way to start getting the help you need. It's not hard right now with things like ZocDoc. You can go find a therapist that you think will meet your needs.
Yeah, or things like BetterHelp or ThinkSpace.
Yeah, where you go on JD's podcast and think that this is therapy and get confused when he's telling you that's going to be public. What, man? Come on.
Just remember, this is definitely not licensed. We're not professionals. We're just sharing our heavy metal feelings.
Yeah. I didn't really think he was my therapist. I didn't know exactly what I was coming on here to do.
Listen, just because I sent you that picture of me shirtless with a stethoscope,
it's pretty cool. I went out and got a stethoscope and a 6-pack of abs myself. Redo after seeing it.
It was great.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your insight, Mike.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, man. This has been really awesome.
Yeah, dude.
And I like your background a lot.
Oh.
Your hair is really cool.
Thank you. I washed it this morning.
Very nicely. Sorry, I have to end with a couple compliments.
You know what, Mike? You are a fantastic and amazing human being. So thank you very much for just sharing some of that positivity with me.
You're extremely intelligent, well articulated.
Oh man! Listen, we're just stroking each other's egos at this point.
Come on over.
I'll be over in 5.
All right, see you then.
Oh man! So before I go, I just want to say that imposter syndrome can really spiral out of control if gone unchecked. So one of the first steps to conquering it is to share your feelings and your experiences. So again, Mike, thank you very much for doing just that. I truly believe that the more we as a society feel comfortable opening up about our struggles, the more it will help others to realize that they are not alone. Everyone has the inner strength to face whatever life puts along their path. So thank you again for taking the time to chat, Mike. And thank you to everyone that has tuned into this episode. If anyone, like Mike said, finds that they are struggling with their mental health, please do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, your family, or a mental health professional. I will have a couple of links in the description of this video that will have some information and connection to further resources. And until next time, remember that you have the strength to conquer your battlefield.